I had a question here asking for some clarity, and I've heard you talk about this before. So you use the Bible, and this person was wondering, how come you're using the Bible to prove what the Bible says?
You know, there's no question I get that's more common than this one, and it's a really, really good question. But I started out by saying, I'm only going to use data which critical scholars allow. And then I started using the Bible. Okay, back when I did my dissertation at Michigan State University, the committee approved the resurrection as a topic, and as we got up to walk out, the head of my program, who didn't believe in miracles or supernatural, he said, by the way, don't say the resurrection happened because the Bible said it happened. But when I went to write it, I used the New Testament. Now, I thought he told me not to do that. So what's the difference between don't do this and do this? That's why I started my lecture tonight by saying critics will concede certain sources, and they will concede 6 to 8 of the 13 books that bear Paul's name. They'll let you use those sources. In fact, if you don't use them, they will use them. All you got to do is take Bart Ehrman's book. Again, he's the agnostic leaning toward atheism. Did Jesus exist? Open it up and see how many times he cites New Testament verses. He cites dozens of verses. So here's the rule. They don't cite the New Testament as inspired, but they cite texts in the New Testament which they have reasons to believe are trustworthy. And then instead of taking the New Testament and doing a top-down argument, everything in this book is true, therefore I'll use it, they go from the bottom up. And they think they have a bunch of reasons to accept certain facts. Let's call them bricks. Let's call every fact a brick. And you start building a wall from the bottom up, and then you ask, what do we know about Jesus from these bricks? And by the end, you have a lot of bricks. So they do not object one little bit to using the New Testament. Just use it critically. Don't use it because you like something the author says, or don't use it because you think it's inspired. Not if you're doing this at a secular school. Use it because you have texts that are well evidenced. Because otherwise, just ask yourself the question, why did they give me the PhD? Because I played by their rules. And that's the way I would argue for the resurrection. I go to state universities and I say, here's my argument tonight. I'm going to use the skeptics' arguments, and I'm going to say we have enough data using their arguments to show that Jesus was raised from the dead. So I said, I'm going to call my argument, Jesus was raised from the dead. I'm going to call that argument, heads I win, tails you lose. And if you think I'm wrong, come up and talk to me about it afterwards. So that's how I start my lecture. And I say it with a smile. Nobody thinks I'm going after them, you know, because I'm often, this was not true 30 years ago, but I'm often co-sponsored now in universities by a Christian group on campus and by the Free Thinkers Society. It's kind of cool. They both come up and introduce me, and they'll say, yeah, we're the Christian group on campus. We're InterVarsity Baptist Student Union, you know, Navigators, whatever, Campus Crusade. And he's coming tonight to defend the resurrection. And the free thinkers come up there, and they're smiling too. They want to, you know, everybody wants to look nice. And they say, hey, we don't believe this stuff, but we are open-minded. We want to hear what he's got to say tonight. Welcome in the name of the free thinkers. I mean, that's cool. All right, well, I'm going to challenge those guys. So that's the groundwork before we start.